All right, welcome everyone. Today I have Ben Lee with me today, who on Table for Two, who I think is like a modern day Renaissance man. If you go to his website, you'll find out he's wrote and directed a movie. He's also co-wrote a whole cartoon series, a comic book series, and now he's developing games. But first of all, this is Table for Two, our board gaming community. So join us at table2.games. And now we'll get right into it. So, welcome, Ben Lee. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. Glad to be here.
So, from your website, you're developing two games. Can you talk about each game a little bit? Because they both sound amazing.
Yeah, thanks. So the first game is called Champions of Wuxing, and so that is a semi-chaotic engine building game. The market pitch is basically if you like Splendor, but you want some of the chaining and combo powers from Wingspan, then
Ooh.
that's going to be hopefully that fits what you want. It's going to have an ancient Chinese aesthetic. Wuxing is basically um, not. It's kind of similar to the five elements in the European context, but it's quite different, I guess, for lack of a better word. Um, but yeah, it's got some terminology that you might be familiar with, like you you have wood, you have fire and water and stuff like that. But how it's done is a little bit different. Um, so yeah, that's the midweight game that I'm doing. Usually plays 60 to 90 minutes. And then the second game I'm working on is a light card game called Pack of Penguins,
Okay.
which is kind of like a trick taker, except there's no suits. And the idea is usually most trick taking games, you're incentivized to always take the highest valued card.
Right.
And I'm trying to subvert that a little bit, where sometimes you don't want the highest valued card. In fact, usually you want the middle valued card. There's always going to be five cards that
Uh-huh.
are in play. And so you want to have the middle valued card most of the time.
Is that a five-player game, or it doesn't matter how many people, you're just always going to have five cards in the middle?
I've been able to make it work pretty well for 2 to 5 players. Um, it's definitely, especially 3 to 5, it plays very similarly, but what happens is, and I can go into the gameplay a little bit more, but essentially, instead of if you have let's say you have 3 human players, then basically you're going to have a deck in the middle of the table, and then you just play the first 2 cards. So those are kind of like the robot players.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
So regardless of if you have 2 to 5 players, there will always be 5 cards in the middle. So the scoring will always be the same consistent way.
Fascinating. I've gotten really into trick-taking games recently, so that one sounds really good. Um, and you said you're getting for the artwork for both of these is from
My comic book, yeah.
Illustrator.
So
The word I couldn't think of.
yeah. Yeah, so I had, as you mentioned earlier, I had a comic book series that I had co-wrote. We had finished the 30 issues that we had planned and everything like that, and it went great. Um, and just in conversations with them, because I had started thinking about designing board games while we were winding down, and I think just out of luck, I just happened to see one of the artists post something about her doing things for her RPG that
Oh,
she does with her friends. Like they were playing D&D, and so I was one day I poked her and was like, hey, you mentioned that you might be interested in doing board game illustration. Tell me more. And so it's great in the sense that like I get to work with 2 really cool artists that I really enjoy in Rachel and Kendall.
that's
Um,
awesome.
and it's great having already that rapport and trust. You've already
Yeah.
done a workflow with them, granted under a different context. So we did have to relearn some stuff, but I would imagine I can't imagine a much more smoother working workflow than with two artists that I trust.
That's awesome. So what suddenly made you after doing movies and that suddenly go, I want to design games? What caused that to suddenly kick in?
I don't know because I just have this weird bug in me. I don't know why I talk like a I do software, so for some reason I called it a bug now. Um, but unintentionally, is I guess just growing up, when I see somebody do something cool, I'm like, oh, I want to be like that person.
Right.
Granted, like I don't, as obviously when I'm young, you don't understand all the hard work
Yeah.
that goes into actually becoming blah blah blah. So obviously, I've had a bunch of gajillion dreams, everything from being a basketball star to being an astronomer or whatever.
I can
And
relate. I can
um, and so yeah, basically when I really got my software career going. Um, I really got gravitated towards web series because that was a new thing at that time, 20 years ago. And digital cameras were available, starting to become much more available. And so I've always wanted to be a movie director and writer. And there was just a perfect timing where it was like, well, I don't have any kids. I don't have a mortgage at this time. It's either I pour in this money to try to do something crazy now before I jump on my next software job, or I wait 20, who knows, 20 years later, because
yeah.
I might have had kids and marriage and kids, and
Yeah.
you don't do that stuff
Yeah.
when the kids are depending on you,
Yeah.
obviously. So I just did that, and then for whatever reason, I got interested into comic books, so I decided to do that. Obviously, I did not become rich and famous from the movie or the comic books.
Yeah. Yeah.
That might have been a factor.
Yeah.
And then around that same time, I started hanging out with some creative friends who were really into the hobby of board games. Um, I had I had not been exposed to anything past Catan, really. Um, and then somebody showed me Seven Wonders, and it was like, what is this game? This is amazing. And actually, it's still my favorite game of all time. Um,
Awesome. Cool. That was one of
so,
my future questions. So great. Seven Wonders. Okay.
spoilers. So yeah, naturally, I think it got to a point where it's like, not only do I love playing these games, and there's so many out there, but can I make one myself? Because I do recall as one of my old not high school, elementary school projects, was like create a board game or something.
Oh,
And of
yeah.
course, it was like a terrible version of like Monopoly or whatever. But it did start creep into my brain. It's like, oh, well, what if I did this or whatever? And
Yeah.
so I think that's where how I started becoming interested in trying to become a board game designer.
So what led you to the two you're working on? What was kind of the
They definitely originate from different places. With the Champions of Wuxing, it was my first game, and it went down a very long path of like having a code designer, then no longer having the code designer, and this and that. And it just got to the point where I finally realized that I'm more like a mechanics type of person, I think, like finding a mechanic that I haven't seen before. And
okay.
so, with doing my best to be concise about the game is it is similar to Splendor, like I said, where you're collecting resources and you use them to gain more powers and this and that. But one of the twists is instead of just one engine, you're going to have three engines, and on those engines, what's called a dispersed mechanism. So after during your turn, you activate one of those three engines, right? After you're done with it, some of the resources that that engine provides or the capabilities have to get dispersed to the other two engines. So basically, the idea was to what I was interested about was A, how to prevent players from spamming a specific
Right.
strategy all the time for the entire game. And at the same time, uh, it could also help you pre-plan ahead, saying like, okay, after I do this turn, if I move this specific card or resource over to this other engine and I want to hit that next turn, it allows me to do XYZ.
Right. Right.
I think it really stemmed from that, and then just not seeing too many. I think I just stumbled upon, oh, the five elements. I know there's a European version, and like, what if there? And I'm pretty sure there's one born out of Asia. So I did a little bit of research, and I'm my parents were born in Taiwan, so I
Oh,
have
yeah.
uh, some Chinese American, so I have a Chinese American experience. Uh, so obviously, I felt like, hey, this is something I don't really see very often. Let me give this a try as a theme. Um, so that's kind of where I come from, how I approached that game. And with Pack of Penguins, it's a little bit simpler. It's just like, okay, I need a shorter game that I can play test with when I'm in these playtest groups that I've realized, oh, people usually design multiple games, and some are long and some are short. And I always thought, hey, wouldn't it be funny if like instead of getting the highest value card, you try to get the middle value card, and
I think
then
that's a
kind of
great idea.
thanks. So it's kind of just playing around with, like I forgot, wiser people have said, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but basically you think of something that you like and how can you put your own personal twist to it. So
Right.
that's what I'm trying to do.
Cool. So how are the both of them in development? How close are we to actually getting our hands on them?
I'm obviously hoping that they're at 90% now. Pack of Penguins took a lot less time, obviously, than Champions. Not just because it's a shorter game, but it is my second game, so I think I've gotten a lot more rookie mistakes out of the way, hopefully. Um, and like obviously, as you mentioned earlier, I've been talking to my artists, and they've already been providing art. So if I'm paying for my art, I better be very very sure that I am
Yeah.
90% there. So yeah, I definitely I hope to be in a point very soon where I've got a rule book out, I've got sell sheets out, and I can make those pitch videos that I've heard about to try to pitch them to publishers out there to see if they have any interest. And if not, then I have to think really hard about, how to run a Kickstarter.
Yeah. That was what I was thinking. It was like maybe a Kickstarter. So you mentioned rookie mistakes. What were some of the, we'd call your rookie mistakes?
Um, okay, definitely speaking of art, not like a really early version of mine. Um, I had gotten really enthusiastic about. And I made the mistake of spending money to go to Print and Play or Game
Oh,
Crafters or one of those sites and like making real like tokens and cards and stuff. And now I realize, okay, like I really should have just spent I already have I'm lucky to have a printer at home, and with on the Apple, on the MacBook, there's that, the app called Multi-Deck.
okay.
And I don't remember who recommended it to me, but someone recommended it to me, and I can't remember either. It was a pretty inexpensive app. I don't remember how much it cost,
Right.
but essentially lets you do templating. So
Oh, wow.
basically, like I want to make 50 cards, and for the most part, they all look like the same
Right.
way, right? Instead of copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, um, you have a spreadsheet with the values, and it points to your assets and whatnot, and it can create the PDFs for you to print out, you know,
Nice. A
and
lot
then
cheaper than going to get something.
right, get something made and just realize it's all, has to be all get redone. So that's definitely one of the biggest things I realized that
So
I put, yeah.
just out of curiosity, so from your initial versions, do you feel like it's changed a lot in just the way it works and flows? It just with constant play testing, you're just constantly changing things up. So, I mean, if you look at your very first thing, you'd be like,
Mhm.
that looks nothing like what I've got now. Is that kind of the case?
That's very much true for Champions of Wuxing,
Uh,
because it at one point it was an alchemy game where the main gimmick was as you're putting stuff together, there's volatile
oh,
um, elements and they can blow up, which blew up everyone else's stuff too. And so that was not conducive for a 90-minute game, you know.
it's kind of reset the board every time.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that, and learning about like players don't like to lose things
Mm,
most of the time, right? And then so things like that. I very much went through like I think this game took like over 5 years
wow.
because basically I was still trying to find my voice. You know, it's
Yeah.
whether in any kind of creative endeavor that you've been in, which, you know, we did talk a little bit
Yeah.
about it offline, is it takes time to know your taste and know what you want to do. So that's why it went through such a crazy journey of different themes and mechanics that were being used. Um, so
That's
yeah.
that's awesome. Well, I'm afraid I'll run out of time, which
Okay.
stinks. Because I've really enjoyed this. But again, thank you. I'm gonna put up your information here so that people know where to go. Ooh, yeah, there it is. Um, go to your website. I'm anxious to see when you can start getting these games into reality because they both sound amazing. As I said, I've gotten into trick taking games, so that one sounds really cool because I like different mechanics of trick taking games. And the other one, I don't fully understand what's happening, but it sounds amazing. So,
Thanks.
so again, here's Ben Lee's information. Here's our table for two information. And again, thank you so much for being here today. And we'll
Yeah.
see you soon.
Thank you for your time, Chris.